Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to give you a world building tip. And of course, before I do it, I kind of want to give you context, and then I'll give you the tip, which is a one sentence tip, and then I'll talk about it at length. So I've already talked in other videos about making settings. I have a whole video about making a good one, and it pretty much consists of questions you should be asking yourself as you put together your setting. I've got another video on a technique to make a setting, which I call my what if method, which is you think of something that's very grounded in reality, but then you say, what if I change this one thing? And then I have a completely separate video on maintaining and extending settings. And I even say IPs because by then you have a lot of things besides setting. You've got a story line and you have mechanics. But all those videos are linked below. This video is not about those things. This is more of a tip on how you should approach world building in your first game. And here's that tip. Do just barely enough world building and no more. That is probably the briefest and most compressedly insightful thing I can say to you if you're setting out on making a game that I had to learn slowly over decades of making games. Let me break it into two things. Let me talk about how much is enough and what's too much. So let's talk about how much is enough. When your players are playing your game, you, the designer, and your team need to know what's going on, even if you don't reveal it all to the player. And the reason for this is you should know enough about what's going on that you're remaining consistent. You know what events got set in motion, how the overall mechanics of your universe work, so you know what can and cannot have happened in the story you're telling, in the lore of the world, and then in the subsequent mechanics that you make for the player. Because those mechanics are going to govern what the player is capable of doing, and you don't want to say, like, this is a world without flight, and then they get a magic fly spell. Unless you want to say, wow, how did that happen? But you probably don't. The other reason you want to do enough world building is players should feel satisfied about what they've learned. When they finish playing your game, they should feel very satisfied about the world they learned about. But they still want more, and I'll talk about what is too much. I'll talk about that. But in other words, you want them to finish, and they're like, wow, that was a really interesting world. I kind of want to know what the source of magic is, though, or I kind of want to know where the gods came from, or I just want to know who that guy who kept showing up all the time and giving me advice. Maybe you never find out in the first game, but if you, the designer, know, you can make sure that everything stays consistent. The way I describe this to a lot of my designers is you have to build a good foundation that your game rests on. But you don't have to build every floor. You don't have to, at the end of your first week of design, go, I want to know exactly what's in the attic. No. And guess what? You may ship without knowing what's in the attic. Maybe you can hear some noises from the attic. Maybe you heard a thump. Maybe the house shook a little. But you're not exactly sure what's in the attic. And this is a good thing. And the reason this is good is why I want to talk about what is too much. The fact that you can go too far in your world building. And the first reason is you want to leave some mystery. It is okay to have unanswered questions. It's fine. In fact, I think the problem a lot of games and movies and TV shows and books do is they reach a point where they've revealed everything. You know everything that's going on. You know everything about everything you could possibly want to know about this world. Every question has been answered. You're kind of done. You don't want to explore this world setting anymore because you know all the answers. So leave some mystery. And part of the way you leave mystery is don't answer every question. The players are going to finish the first game with questions. You know, where'd the villain come from? Where'd he go? What's going on with this? How did this work? It's okay if you don't answer those questions. It's even better if you know the answer yourself, but you don't necessarily need to. And here's the best part: you can you can give an answer that leads to more questions. So if someone wants to go like, I just want to know who that guy was, and they're like, oh, that was the scientist that created you, and you're like, what? Am I a robot? Am I synthetic? What are you talking about? What do you mean created? Okay, bye. And especially if it had nothing to do with the game, the story of the first game, but that's a possibility for you to finish the game and learn, oh, am I somehow not a regular human? It's sort of like the mystery of Blade Runner, the first movie. Was Deckard a synth or not? Don't know. Yeah, I love that they make it a question. Maybe he is. The first cut didn't even hint at that. The second one did, because he dreams of unicorns, and then the other policeman who follows him around leaves a little origami unicorn there. That makes you go, wait a minute. How would he know what dreams that guy's having unless his dreams were implanted along with all of his memories? I love that. So because of that, you should leave some vagueness in your answers. So even when you answer questions at the end of the game, or by the end of the game, because you don't have to do all the answers at the end, you don't have to flood them with all the answers at the end. As they're going along and they're learning about your world, there should be some vagueness in the answers. Like, where did that one villain go? Maybe he wasn't the final villain that you destroyed at the end, but where does henchman go? Or maybe when you were doing quests for the queen, there's a mention that her son disappeared years ago, but it has nothing to do with what she's asking you to do. And maybe there are side quests that indicate that maybe the queen's son was kidnapped, or maybe he fled the country because he had a special power that was illegal in that country, or maybe he went to join some magic school, or he just went to join some monastery. You don't know, and that one doesn't have to be revealed. As the player goes along, he can learn more and more about it, but if it's a side quest, you can leave it unanswered. That's okay. You can calm down and go, I don't need to answer everything in every single thing I reveal. Having vagueness has a really big advantage of that. Now you have some wiggle room to change some background and some history and even some elements of the IP, like some of the mechanics, in that you can make them more specific on the next go around. And the reason for this is players will usually point out things in your first game that weren't quite right. Like, hey, I thought magic wasn't supposed to be able to do this, and then it did. Or, hey, I thought the technology worked this way, but then we learned this other thing. Or, wait, were there... I don't think there's really aliens. I don't think that was an alien because of this thing. If you're not overly specific, you can look at all the things that players are saying about your game after it comes out, and I guarantee you some of them are going to have better ideas than you did. And you can go, maybe that guy was an alien. Maybe he was a god. You can come up with all these really cool things and use their puzzlement as a springboard into more ideas that you want to do in the sequel. And that's the final thing I want to talk about why you don't want to do too much. Could there be a sequel to the game you're making? Did you leave enough room in this world to have another big story? Because if you try to answer everything, if you try to dot every I and cross every T, there may not be a big story left to tell. All the bignesses all the big mysteries of this world have been resolved. Now, I know this advice seems somewhat vague, and people maybe were hoping for much more specific, actionable advice. Well, guess what? There are a few videos that are linked here that are full of specific, actionable advice. This is more of guidelines. This is a very high-level guideline that I didn't realize in my first few games I should be following. I think if you really think about this and follow these guidelines, it's going to help you make just enough lore for your game, but not too much.